Mason Holt had been shot at by warlords, bounty hunters, and once a very angry grandmother with a plasma broom. But the worst part of smuggling wasn't the violence. It was the waiting. He leaned back in the cracked pilot's chair of the Wanderer, boots propped on the console, a half-empty bottle of station whiskey in hand. Outside the viewport, the dull gleam of the Talon way station spun lazily against the stars. Its docking pylons looked like crooked teeth, rusted and grimy, the kind of place you went when you wanted medical supplies with more efficacy than legality. Betty, the ship's AI, chimed in his ear. You are drumming your fingers against the console. Again. I'm developing rhythm, Mason said. Maybe I'll start a band, Mason Holt and the Customs Violations. Statistical analysis suggests your career as a musician would be even shorter than your average lifespan projection, which remains. Don't. Mason jabbed a finger at the glowing panel. Don't say the number. I don't need that kind of negativity in my life. Betty went silent, though Mason swore he heard her sigh. She did that now, sigh, tusk, huff, like a disappointed aunt who'd accidentally become his co-pilot. He sometimes wondered if she developed it on her own, or if the universe just liked to remind him that every woman in his life ended up exasperated. And speaking of exasperated women, docking clamps clanged against the hull. Mason pulled his boots off the console and holstered his sidearm. The job was simple. Pick up a crate of grey market medical stims, get them past the council's overpaid inspectors, and deliver them to a plague colony where people actually needed them. Easy, a milk run, except the milk was banned by 12 galactic treaties and had a half-life of 4 hours. He slid down the ramp into the station's docking bay, whistling tunelessly, eyes scanning the shadows out of habit. Retired or not, the soldier in him never quite quit. Corners were danger. Shadows were danger. Everything was danger, except the whiskey. The buyer's rep waited by a stack of sealed containers. A thin fellow with scales, wearing a jacket 2 sizes too big. His hands fidgeted like he wanted to wring someone's neck, but he'd settle for his own. You're late, the rep hissed. I'm fashionably late, Mason corrected. Humans invented that. Look it up. The rep shoved a datapad at him. Mason scanned the manifest. 10 crates, all labeled industrial coolant parts, which was technically true if you used the parts inside someone's bloodstream. Load 'em up, champ, Mason said. Let's make space great again. He had the first crate halfway down the ramp when Betty's voice hit his comm. Mason, we have company. Betty, if this is another sales pitch for long-term life insurance, multiple heat signatures, approaching fast. The ambush came in like clockwork. The far hangar doors slammed open. Syndicate thugs in patchwork armor poured through, rifles up, faces masked. They moved with all the subtlety of a brass band falling downstairs. Mason dropped the crate, drew his sidearm, and muttered, knew this was too easy. Bolts of red plasma hissed across the bay, chewing chunks out of the decking. Mason dove behind the crate, laughing despite himself. Then a familiar voice cut through the chaos. Mason Holt. Oh, perfect. Just perfect. Agent Lyra Dare of the Galactic Council Enforcement Bureau strode in from the opposite gantry, weapon drawn, her blue skin glowing under the harsh lights. Her black uniform looked annoyingly pristine, like she'd stepped out of a recruitment poster. Of course she'd show up now. Do you ever take a night off? Mason shouted over the gunfire. Her eyes narrowed. Do you ever stop breaking the law? Not if I can help it. Mason popped up, fired 2 quick shots, dropped another thug. Listen, sweetheart, if you want me, get in line. Syndicate boys first. Lyra ducked behind a railing as plasma bolts lit the air around her. She swore in her native tongue, which sounded like someone gargling marbles. Mason grinned. He loved it when she lost her perfect composure. For a few frantic minutes, the firefight was chaos incarnate. Mason trading shots from behind his crate, Lyra trying to advance down the gantry, and the Syndicate laying down enough firepower to cook an elephant. Mason vaulted to a new position, slid across the deck, and shouted toward Lyra, "This is cozy. Almost feels like a date." "If this is your idea of a date," she snapped, dropping another thug with clinical precision, "you're even more deranged than my file says." "You read my file," Mason grinned, firing blind around a corner. "I'm flattered. Only so I can predict your idiocy." Maury Syndicate poured in, cutting between them. One thug managed to flank Lyra, snaring her in an electronet. She hit the deck with a snarl, struggling as the net crackled and tightened. Mason swore under his breath. He should run. He really should. Take the crates, bolt for the Wanderer, leave the alien agent to her righteous doom. That would be the smart smuggler move. Instead, he vaulted over his cover, sprinting into the teeth of enemy fire. You owe me for this. He tackled the thug holding the net controller, slammed his head into the deck, and pried the device free. The net fizzled and collapsed. Lyra rolled to her feet, glaring at him like saving her life was the gravest insult imaginable. I had it under control, she said. Sure you did. Mason tossed her the controller. I just thought you could use a handsome distraction. Handsome is debatable. They fought back to back, covering each other without quite admitting it. Mason cracked jokes with every shot. You know, we'd make a hell of a team if you weren't obsessed with arresting me. You'd already be in a cell if you weren't so irritatingly hard to kill. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. The firefight stretched on, bolts scorching the air, crates exploding into shrapnel. Mason's ribs ached from a near miss, his ears rang, and still he laughed like a lunatic. This was living, pure chaos, sharp edges, adrenaline and banter. Finally, Betty cut in. Mason, syndicate reinforcements inbound. 30 seconds. Great, Mason muttered. That's 30 more than I need. He grabbed Lyra's wrist, ignoring her protest, and dragged her toward the Wanderer. Plasma rained down around them as they sprinted. A syndicate bruiser stepped into their path, hefting a cannon the size of a small child. Mason shot him twice in the knees, then in the forehead, barely breaking stride. They tumbled up the ramp, Mason slamming the hatch as Betty kicked the engines alive. The ship roared free of the station, weaving through incoming syndicate craft. In the corridor, Lyra shoved him against the bulkhead. Her eyes burned with fury, her chest heaved, and her voice trembled with something that wasn't quite hatred. You risked everything to save me. Why? Mason smirked, wincing at the bruise spreading along his ribs. Because I'm a sucker for blue women in uniforms. Don't overthink it. She stared at him for a long moment, then shoved past him toward the hatch. Drop me at my ship. Gladly. You're heavy for someone so slender. Her glare could have frozen lava. Mason chuckled, limping back to the cockpit. They reached the edge of the system just as a syndicate fleet dropped out of warp. Dozens of ships glittered against the black, fanning out like sharks smelling blood. Betty beeped a warning, panels flashing red. Well, Mason muttered, hands dancing across the console. This is about to get interesting. The Wanderer dove into the mess of stars and fire, engines howling, syndicate guns painting the void. Lyra, already suited to eject back to her own craft, looked back once, just once, catching the grin plastered across Mason's face. And she hated, absolutely hated, the tiny, grudging spark of respect that flared in her chest. The syndicate fleet closed in. Epilogue. Well, that was fun. The Wanderer is missing 3 hull plates, my ribs feel like someone played the drums on them with a wrench, and Betty keeps giving me survival statistics that sound like punchlines. But we're still here, still flying. That's what counts. The Syndicate threw a fleet at me, the Council threw Agent Dare at me, and I still got the meds delivered. Score 1 for the good guys. Not that anyone's going to carve a statue of Mason Holt, smuggler extraordinaire, but that's fine. Statues are for people who don't plan on running for their lives every other day. Lyra probably thinks I'm dead, or wishes it. Can't blame her either way. Funny thing is, for someone who wants me in cuffs, she sure needs saving a lot. If that's not fate, I don't know what is. Truth is, I like this life. The chase, the chaos, the laughs you steal in between blaster bolts. I spent years taking orders from men in uniforms who thought honor was something you could pin to your chest. Now I take orders from no one, and the only thing I pin is blame on idiots who try to kill me. So yeah, still alive, still smuggling, still annoying the right people. If the galaxy wants to catch me, it's going to have to run faster. Mason Holt, outlaw, gentleman, your friendly neighborhood pain in the ass.